Well, that was fantastic.
Say that again?
I said that was fantastic. So we all know that the Fantastic Four have been a property that Marvel hasn't been able to get right because you had the first film in 1994 that was basically only made to keep the license for the characters. Then in 2005, you had the proper introduction of these characters, which wasn't great. You know, it had its issues. It was still decent fun. It had a great cast. Then, of course, they rebooted once again for a third time in 2015. That was easily the worst of the bunch. A terrible movie. I don't know what happened in production of that one, but Josh Trank just turned in a horrible Fantastic Four movie. But now in 2025, we finally have a great Fantastic Four movie on our hands. I was so happy after watching this movie. And it's funny because it took four different reboots to finally get it right. That's something that I just found hilarious because it's Fantastic Four and it took four different times to finally get this family correct on the big screen. But I thought it was just awesome. If you're a Marvel fan like me, you're really going to enjoy this one. I even went into this one with some pretty high expectations because I loved all the trailers. Right from the teaser trailer, I was hooked. I saw Ben Grimm, the Thing in the teaser, a comic accurate version. I was like, this is what we need. This is what we wanted. And I was just like, I'm so hyped. Every other trailer after that, I was like, I'm getting more hyped. I'm getting more hyped. I think they showed a little too much in those trailers though. I hope that they kind of go back from that. I know they're trying to bring fans back, but I think they showed a little too much because the movie isn't that long to begin with. And still, though, I thought that this was a great another step in the right direction for Marvel this year after having Daredevil, Thunderbolts, Ironheart, and now this. I'm really loving what Marvel's been doing this year. Outside of course, Captain America, I didn't think that one was that great. I think I gave it like a 5 out of 10. But still, Marvel's in a great spot. The comic book movies this year have been great. Also, Thunderbolts, as I already previously mentioned, a fantastic character study with some, anti-heroes that soon become heroes. Then we just had Superman, which I loved. I just love that anything that James Gunn does, Superman, DC's finally in a great spot. And now Fantastic Four. I think that all three of those are so damn good in their own way. And what's even greater about that is that, those movies, kind of require no homework. I would say Thunderbolts maybe requires a little bit of homework. Superman, the first one, DC. But then Kevin Feige came out and said that, this Fantastic Four movie requires no other, previously watched Marvel movies or shows because it does take place in its own universe, but still those post-credit scenes you might want to know what's happening later in Marvel. But if you're not a big Marvel person, haven't watched all of them, you can still go into this one and have a fantastic time with Marvel's first family. One of my favorite elements of this film was the visuals and the whole style that Matt Shackman and cinematographer Jess Hall went with. It's basically a retro futuristic version of the 60s. You have the old clothing, but there are new like flying cars, technology that's like super advanced. And with all that, you have some great sets, great practical sets, I would say, because some Marvel movies use a lot of green screen, no sets, just people standing on a screen. This one though has those great sets, beautiful sets. I mean, the colors are popping, feels like a real movie. It's just everything that I really hoped for. I dug it all. It felt like a world that I would want to go to and visit. One element that's been hit or miss with Marvel lately has been the visual effects. Captain America had some pretty bad visual effects for basically, half of the movie. Thunderbolts was like really seamless, like 99% of it was outstanding. And I'm happy to say here that 95% of the CGI here is great. It's basically all seamless. There's a specific portion of the movie that takes place in space when the Fantastic Four have to go, check something out, be like, Silver Surfer shows up as you see in the trailers. They got to go to space. That had my jaw on the floor just seeing how good everything looked. I got major Interstellar vibes from all that. And if you didn't know, that's my favorite movie. So I was like, this space stuff is legit insane. Just keep the movie there for the whole time. That was probably my favorite part of it. And it just looked so damn good. The other 5% that wasn't as great is basically Baby Franklin, because at some points it's not a real baby, it's a CGI baby. And I understand why they have to do that, because you can't really have a baby on set at some time when you're filming like a big action movie. You know, big movies like this are hard to have a baby, but when he's basically a major element of your film, you have to replace it with a CGI version. Sometimes it's really noticeable, other times I can basically just look through it, I can look past it. So it wasn't that big that it really takes you at the movie, but you do notice it at some points. But still, I'd say like 95% of this movie has some of the best visual effects that you'll see in a Marvel film. And just adding to that, you know, we said that the 60s retro futuristic style that they went with, it makes this one of the best looking Marvel movies of all time. I think my favorite part of this movie was Michael Giacchino's score. I think a lot of people are going to agree with this statement, because he's hit another home run, man. He's such a great composer, and you know, he's been working for a long time. I think it's like 20, 30 years in this industry. He makes some great movies. You know, he's of course known for making The Incredibles, which is basically kind of Fantastic Four also. He previously did a couple other movies that are great. He works a lot. I mean, he does like 2, 3 movies a year, something like that. You know, I think my favorite score from him was, of course, the Batman. That one just is kind of in my head permanently. The Batman score is off the charts. And this one is great. I think it's one of Marvel's best scores. And Michael Giacchino has worked with Marvel for some other films, but he truly did something very special with this one. It feels like nothing we've heard before in this universe. It doesn't feel generic like some other scores do. You know, when you watch a movie, you're like, oh, that music feels like every other thing that I've heard before in another movie. But this one has soul. It kind of means something to me, makes you feel something during those scenes. And that's kind of how I felt with the Batman, you know, watching Dune, watching a Hans Zimmer scored movie. It makes you feel something during those scenes, and this one does in a big way. I loved what Michael Giacchino turned in with this one. Now, talking about some of our characters, let's talk about the villains first, because we finally can talk about Galactus, and that he isn't a giant cloud this time. He was beautiful, man. Finally, comic accurate Galactus on screen. He's terrifying, but man, he looked good. I loved how Galactus looked, that, you know, classic purple design. I do wish we had more screen time of him, because he really is on screen a lot. He's kind of underdeveloped in a way, but we already know who Galactus is if you're a big Marvel fan. Ralph Ineson nailed his voice. He has such a great voice. If you love him in this, make sure to watch Robert Eggers movies. He's so great in those. The action with him in the third act was also super cool. And his Herald, Julia Gardner as Shalabal, or the Silver Surfer, she's also fantastic. I was a little bit worried about her because, you know, I don't know a lot about this character, but she is from the comics, and she has some of the best scenes in this movie, because her stuff in space, as I already said, was insane. It's probably my favorite scenes from the movie. She just is so badass. She's an amazing character. The visual effects done on her are just so damn good. I'm gonna say they're damn good. I'm not gonna curse any more than that. And you know, her actually backstory was kind of tragic. I really liked how they kind of told that part of her story, and her and Johnny's banter was also really great. Now I'm going to rank the 4 main members of the Fantastic Four. I'm just going to say I loved all of them, but of course, we have to have, you know, the worst one of 4, which is going to be Ben Grimm, Eben Moss-Bachrach. And I'm only saying he's the worst for me, even though I still liked him, because it didn't feel like he had a lot to do. They didn't really showcase the Thing's powers that well. You know, he does some punching, does, you know, some clobbering, let's say, throws some stuff, but I expected a little bit more out of his power set. I wanted him to do some really, you know, better things with them, some cooler things. Still love Eben, though, in this. He's, you know, kind-hearted soul and that big rock body. I thought he was also, you know, kind of really had an interesting story with this other character. I feel like some stuff was cut out there because it feels also very undeveloped, but I also, you know, thought Evan just did a great job, even though his character didn't really have that much to do at some specific parts. Next up, we have Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards. Finally, a great Reed Richards, because I'm not really liking the other versions of Reed Richards in the other movies. I think they were, you know, just okay. Pedro Pascal is great. I know some people are tired of seeing him in the movies, but I'm loving it. Pedro Pascal is such a great actor. He's very charismatic, looks smart on screen, and he does really good in here. His stretching powers are actually shown more than I thought they would have been, and he gets a scene with the Galactus that was kind of hard to watch. It was very gruesome for his character, but it was also really cool. I thought his stretching looked really great on screen. Next up is Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm. I loved her in here. I've always loved Vanessa Kirby. I feel like she needs more roles. You know, she was fantastic in the Mission Impossible movies. Some other movies she was also great in. I feel like she's going to be damn good when we see her in Avengers Doomsday, because here, her character, god damn, she was badass in so many different ways. You know, she's having a kid, and then she does some great and interesting things with her power set. I kind of wanted what they did with her out of, you know, the Thing. I feel like the Thing got the short stick, but then, you know, Sue Storm got to do some amazing things with their power. I never knew that she was this powerful, but in the third act, the last fight scene, she kind of carries the squad, and I was like, damn, you are strong. But my favorite character is Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm. I've always been a huge Johnny Storm fan. He's always been my favorite member of the Fantastic Four because he's really witty. You know, he always jokes around. And this is my favorite version. I like Chris Evans' version, but I think that Joseph Quinn just nails it here. His, you know, flame on power is really cool. I love the firepower. I was a little disappointed he never said flame on here. I wish he said it at least once. That would have been really cool. As I said before, I liked his banter with Shala Ball, Silver Surfer, and you know, Joseph Quinn, he's nailing it too these past couple years. It's kind of crazy that he came into Stranger Things and he left it after one season, ended up being like the most popular person, getting the most jobs out of that cast. But I'm not complaining. He's also going to be in the new Beatles movie, so good for him. I thought he was my favorite actor in this movie. Now I want to talk about some of the issues I had with this movie. There's not a lot of them, but I'm going to say that the lack of action in this movie kind of hurt it just a little bit, but I still love the emotional stuff that we get from it. Because in the first act, you have a decent amount of action. Third act, you have a lot of action with Galactus. The second act is where the movie kind of slows down a bit. It's more of an emotional story about Franklin and all that. I do wish though we had one more action set piece. It would have been great. Would have made this film like, you know, one of the best Marvel movies, like top 3 for me. But I just thought it lacked a little bit in the middle. And I also felt like it needed, you know, 15 to 20 more minutes, and it would have been a masterpiece, as I said, because you would have been able to add more scenes with Galactus, as I said, and wanted more of him. And then you would have been able to add another action set piece in the middle of the movie. So another 15 to 20 minutes would have made this movie perfect in my eyes. But it's just a small issue for me. Overall, the Fantastic Four First Steps continues Marvel's new winning streak, and it's the best Fantastic Four movie by a long shot. I was instantly obsessed with the visual style and world that Matt Shakman developed because I love science fiction, and the visual effects are almost perfect. We finally got a comic accurate Galactus who is terrifying, and I hope he comes back in the future. The main cast was great. They felt like a true family, with my standouts being Vanessa Kirby and Joseph Quinn. And as I said before, I have some small issues with how short the movie was, but man, it feels like Marvel is in a fantastic spot again. I'm going to give the Fantastic Four First Steps a strong 8 out of 10. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel because it helps me out a lot and it's free to do so. And if you did see this movie, leave your own thoughts down below in the comments, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.